welcome to the November 1st, 2016 school committee meeting. We're happy to have you join us. This evening's meeting is being recorded by East Hampton Media. East Hampton Media channels 191, 192, and 193 is looking for volunteers. If anyone is interested in helping to tape city government meetings, please contact Kathy Lynch at 413-203-1360. And we'd like to thank Tim Riley for taping tonight's meeting for us. Superintendent Collins, could you have some announcements for us?
Yes, I do. The next regular school committee meetings are November 29th, December 13th, 2016, January 12th, and January 26th, 2017. The East Hampton High School Drama Club will hold this year's musical, The Wizard of Oz, on November 17th through 20th. The Strengthening Families program at Whitebrook Middle School began a 7-week program on October 6th. East Hampton Eagles football team will play Taconic in a tournament game at Taconic this Friday, November 4th. The Apple a Day 5K will be held on November 6th. The information and registration, information on times and registration information is on the district website. College application celebration day is November 16th at East Hampton High School. The National Honor Society induction is November 22nd at East Hampton High School. The Thanksgiving football game against Northampton is at 10 o'clock at Whitebrook Middle School.
Very good, thank you. I also just wanted to add, I learned today that the phone number for calling to reserve tickets for the Wizard of Oz musical that's happening at East Hampton High School, the phone number is 527-1163. If anyone wants to call that number, you reserve tickets and then you pay for them at the door at the event. So that number again for anyone who's interested is 527-1163.
Thank you.
Should be a great show. Okay, moving on. Correspondence. Marissa.
There's no correspondence for this week.
Okay. Gifts? I don't believe we have gifts either. Okay, very good. This brings us to the public speak portion of our meeting. Is anyone here that would like to speak to us as a committee? It doesn't appear as though there is anyone here to do that. So we will move on to our subcommittee reports. Finance Subcommittee.
There is no report.
And the Policy Review Subcommittee?
Yeah, sure. We had a number of things that we discussed when we met last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, on October 18th. First, due to a number of external commitments, Sarah Hunter stepped down as the chair of the subcommittee, and I'm taking over that position for the remainder of the year. And we spent the majority of our meeting talking about transportation policy, trying to figure out how we can bus more kids. And one of the things that we're discussing with Carol Robillard is the possibility of a lottery. We're still trying to figure out how we can make a lottery work, and we're thinking about seeing if it's possible to invite families to join already established bus stops via a lottery. So that way we don't have to adjust the routes too much, but there might be ways that that could serve families who do win those lottery tickets. We also discussed with the Superintendent Fonsby reported that she had discussed with the PTO co-chair about establishing a walking school bus. And we're also looking for the support of the PTO to help families link up with carpooling partners, with acknowledgement that the school can't actually really give an official, any official endorsement of those programs, because it would be something that's happening outside of the district that the PTO is organizing, but that might be a resource for other families that the PTO could facilitate. Was there anything else, Peter? Did you have something that you wanted to mention about transportation at this point?
No, I just want to reinforce the idea that I don't think we've exhausted the consideration of possible ways that we can improve the efficiency with which we fill every possible bus on every possible trip. I know that ideal can never be achieved, but I think that you've highlighted the method that we're still exploring, and I think that is something that's not yet exhausted. So for the families that are still waiting for good news, they should not take no news at this point to be bad news that we're
Right.
still working on.
Still working on it, exactly. And then the other thing is that we talked about really trying to improve our communications with families about transportation, so that way they are prepared for those stages at which there are changes in the when students enter the 5th grade and the mileage changes for eligibility, and then also as the students are entering into 7th grade, and there becomes the fee to take the bus. So we want to be sure that our families are aware of what's coming in terms of transportation policy and have a chance to plan for it. Additionally, during our meeting, we talked about the kindergarten entry age policy in response to a family that was interested in enrolling a student who will be turning 5 slightly before the cutoff. And Superintendent Fonsby is going to look into what neighboring districts do to come up with a form of a sort of standardized method for evaluating kindergarten readiness. So that way, on a case-by-case basis, we can consider the students of families who do want to enter just before that age limit. So that way there's a way to accommodate those families whose kids really are ready to start kindergarten but are just missing by a few days. And that was, yes.
I just wanted to add to that I would ask the superintendent to also look at the policies regarding the early age entry in the local charter schools, because part of the new reality that we face is that if the charter schools are flexible on this deadline, then it's certainly even further reason for us to consider being so as well.
Mm-hmm. I will do that.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
That moves us to the summary of our ad hoc subcommittee meeting. On October 18th, the committee met to discuss a possible resolution opposing ballot question 4, the legalization of the commercial marijuana industry and recreational marijuana in Massachusetts. After a lengthy discussion, the committee agreed that marijuana use by teenagers and children is harmful to their health and safety, and legalizing the drug may make it more accessible to young people. Studies show that it impairs brain development, negatively affects long-term developmental growth, reduces IQ, memory, and diminishes learning functions. The committee also agreed that marijuana-infused edibles will present challenging issues for the health and safety of young people. The committee could not agree, however, on how to issue a public resolution about this ballot question. As a result, we will not be issuing a resolution on this matter at this time. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add to that statement or summary? Okay, so we will move on to our Collaborative for Educational Services update.
The next meeting is November 16th, so at our end of November meeting, I'll have an update.
Okay, very good. And it doesn't appear as though our student representative is here today to give us a student activities update, so we'll have to rely on all of Nancy's information in her announcements.
Yes.
Can I just, I know that I've mentioned this in the past, and I apologize for being little Johnny one note about it, but I think the idea of having this be a shared responsibility, and I may have misremembered, I thought there were 2 people this year who could serve in this role, and I realized that the students at East Hampton High School are extraordinarily busy, but I think it's something of a loss when we don't have a report, and when we don't have a student who can hear directly what the school committee is considering, and who can share with us directly their impressions of school life. I think this is now twice since the school year has begun that we've had a meeting without the benefit of the student rep being here, and I'm sure there's good reason for it, but I would encourage the principal of the high school to expand the leadership opportunity here so that we can be sure that that seat is full as often as possible.
And as our principal's here this evening, I'm sure he's heard that request, and he and I will be talking about that.
Very good. Okay, moving on to resolution question 2 discussion. We had mentioned that we would like to discuss once again our resolution on question 2 against lifting the cap on the Commonwealth charter schools, and take this opportunity to share that message once again before and while voting is happening. We could read the resolution aloud. Do you want to start off that way and then see if you have any other comments to add? Does everyone have a copy of it in front of them, or should I read it myself?
I don't have a copy in front of me.
I did not bring mine.
Okay, then if you'll Bear with my voice for this lengthy document. I'll read the whole thing. Our resolution against lifting the cap on Commonwealth charter schools. Whereas free public schools available to all students regardless of income, ability, need, or English language proficiency are foundational to our democracy. And whereas public education was meant to be the melting pot of our diversity, a place where students from varied socio-economic backgrounds, ethnicities, and lived experiences could come together and build a stronger nation and a meaningful democracy. And whereas all of our students deserve high-quality public schools that teach the whole child, providing enrichment and addressing social and emotional needs in addition to core academic subjects. And whereas local accountability for our public schools is necessary to ensure that schools are responsive to the needs of their communities. And whereas Massachusetts charter school finance is biased heavily in favor of charter schools and severely compromises funding to public schools, resulting in a loss of funds that is undermining the ability of districts to provide all students with the educational services to which they are entitled. And whereas Commonwealth charter schools are often approved over the objections of a majority of community residents and their elected officials and are not accountable to local elected officials once they're approved. And whereas Commonwealth charter schools often fail to serve the same proportion of special needs students, low-income students, and English language learners as the districts from which they receive students, and often use high suspension rates and other counseling methods to drive out students they don't want to serve. And whereas Commonwealth charter schools claim that they help close the achievement gap, they are instead accentuating that gap by selectively serving students who are generally performing well and are thus creating separate and unequal opportunities for success. And whereas our focus as a state should be on creating excellent public schools for all students and striving to achieve the primary mission of public education, educating all young people to be effective citizens in a democracy, and whereas lifting the cap on charter schools would greatly worsen the problems listed above and lead to a more costly and divisive two-track school system, therefore let it be resolved that the East Hampton School Committee opposes lifting the cap on Commonwealth charter schools.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd like to just also, I mean, we didn't really talk about this in the resolution, but since we've been discussing it, I want to emphasize that, you know, if you have your kids enrolled in a charter school or there's a charter school in the area that you really like, that you want your kids to go to, you know, voting no on question 2 isn't necessarily voting against all charter schools. Like, you're voting no on changing the cap for charter schools in the Commonwealth. And I think what I've appreciated from a lot of folks that I know who support a specific charter school or who like the idea of charter schools is that many people can also say, but we're not ready to lift that cap because we haven't figured out a way to fund the schools that's equitable and that's fair to local districts. So I think, like, if you, just because you have your kid in a charter school or just because you like a charter school, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to vote yes. Like, I think it's important for people to understand that you can vote no and you're not necessarily voting against all charter schools. You know, you're voting against lifting the cap, and it's an important distinction.
And Nancy, you might
excellent
want
point.
to just follow up on the taping we just did earlier.
Certainly. I was going to just mention that. The mayor and school committee member Casey Corsell and I participated in a forum on the charter cap at 4:30 today. East Hampton Media taped it and will have it available to the public. I'm not sure when, probably by tomorrow. Chris, and do you remember his last name?
Capucci.
Mayor? Capucci. And Nellie, math teacher at the high school. Nellie, why can't I?
Donahue.
Donahue, thank you. Remember your name at this moment. Also participated, and we had a very lively discussion. And Sarah, that was really one of the strong points that came out, that it's really about the funding formula that is currently in place and not voting to raise the cap on charter schools until a solution has been found to the problem of the amount of funding that is drained from our public schools and our cities with the current funding formula. And Karen, did you want to add
Right,
anything else?
and thank you, Nancy, and we
Or
also
Casey.
talked about the likelihood of that funding formula not changing if question 2 goes through. So it's very detrimental to our public funding.
Right, and I think one thing that was, that Chris had mentioned was that it's not only about raising the cap on the amount of charter schools allowed to be built, it's also raising the cap on the amount of money that goes with the student. Currently, it's 9%. It's capped at 9%, and that cap could be lifted to anything.
2 caps he was talking about.
2 caps he was
Exactly.
talking about. And like Sarah said, it's not, if you're happy and your child is at the charter school, this isn't anti-charter school. This is really about the funding formula for charter schools, and it's not an equal thing, and it doesn't allow the public community schools to offer all the things that we really want to offer for our community. Mayor, you spoke about we lose $943,000
This year,
this year.
which
And
has
that's-
almost doubled since 2014, fiscal 14. This is fiscal 17. So, but I think what the point that we're trying to make clear is the ballot question is about the cap. Our main concerns are about funding and accountability, and that is the frustration of the question itself. So,
And it's difficult to listen to the ads on TV that say that voting in favor of increasing the cap would not harm the regular public schools, because it will. I mean, in our specific example, we will be losing $943,000 this year because of public school tuitions we need to pay out of our budget. So,
And I think another point that is maybe illuminating is the reimbursement. And Mayor, maybe you could cite that number. So over $900,000 leaves our district, leaves our community, leaves our city. And the reimbursement formula is supposed to be 100% the first year a child leaves the district, 25% in the 4 succeeding years. However, that has not been fully funded by the state either, just as many other initiatives. But the reimbursement to the city of East Hampton this year to offset that over $900,000 was,
well, it actually, I don't mind.
I think you said
If you- I don't mind reading those numbers
Yeah, that would be-
again. Actually, that 940.
included that
Right,
reimbursement.
that amount actually is our.
Oh, that's right.
I call it
After
a deficit.
reimbursement.
That's the
Which
net
was-
loss.
Right.
So
The
this year
addition-
alone, 1 million, this is what we paid out. So like people saying it doesn't cost us anything. It's the part that none of us I can't comprehend that. Because this year, $1,113,723,000 went out. And what we got back in for reimbursement was $170,839, which is a $943,000 loss.
And that's about 15% you're reimbursed.
And just looking at it, it was $499 in fiscal 14. So almost doubled from fiscal 14 to fiscal 17.
That's because you get reimbursed at a greater amount the first year, and then it just drops off.
And I don't think any of us remember 100% reimbursement in any
Yeah.
first year, and it was all, and the reimbursement does not go on and on and on. It was only 4 years.
And Chris was saying
And
that
it's not considered an unfunded mandate.
Yeah. Chris was
course it
saying that
is.
the state hasn't fully funded the reimbursements that they are supposed to fund for the last 5 years.
Right.
And how much does the fact that we're in a huge revenue crisis right now, this fiscal year in the state, in terms of our tax revenue, like how much does that impact this? Like, are we impacted by the fact that we don't have the tax revenue that we usually do?
That has nothing to do with these figures.
Okay, cool. I'm just wondering.
This is what we receive from the state for our budgets.
Okay.
And like the numbers go up, and as you can see, so does our net loss. So when people are saying it doesn't cost the district anything, I have no idea how they're saying that.
Yeah, I mean, just to take a very tangible example, just since I was reporting on the transportation, we were talking about trying to reduce the mileage to bring more White Book students to the middle school. And if we reduce the mileage at all, there's an increase of charter families that we will have to bring all the way out to the industrial park on the edge of East Hampton, Northampton. And so we have to say no to our public school families because there's no way to be able to get the buses all the way out there and bring more public school kids to White Brook.
And those
So-
are just some of the, like we talked about, those are just some of the hidden costs.
Right.
The 943 is pretty obvious.
Right.
But the hidden costs, taking real estate property off our tax roll, and you're talking about $3.2 million piece of real estate off the tax roll. You know, so there's so many other hidden costs that you don't see. And then Nancy had gone into detail about, you know, when you lose a student in each grade, you still have to supply the same amount of services to the rest of the students in there. So saying the money follows the student, I really don't get that.
Not the
Because
cost,
what's left behind
Not the cost.
is the loss of revenue, which is huge.
Could I just emphasize one of the 2 points that you made? I mean, I think the financial argument is overwhelming. I think the accountability piece, as we highlighted at least once before, about public funds being spent absent direct public supervision is a second major concern. The concept of taxation without representation is well known in a long part of American political beliefs. I would, and I speak only for myself in this, go further, and that the system of subsidizing the deconstruction of the public school system, which, make no mistake, if the theory is that more is better, and that the charter school model is working, which is what its advocates would have you believe, the logical extension of that is to ultimately entirely replace the public school system as we know it and as it is operated for an extended period of time in the Commonwealth for 170 years, serving well our students, and beyond, you know, whatever the educational merits may be. And I think there's reason to dispute some of the claims that are made about the better results that charter schools produce when they're compared with the schools in the valley that the students depart. I think there's something fundamentally unprincipled about the idea that we can take away institutions that define community. The public school system is the single entity that creates an intersection for the largest percentage of the population in any town. Public school is the place where the single largest percentage of people gather with a shared interest and a common commitment to the future. And this question and the broader charter school movement are dedicated to eradicating that. And it seems, you know, and the governor I know has traveled to New York to speak with advocates of charter schooling there. And in all of the addresses that he has made, I have yet to hear him effectively respond to the concern that people feel about the loss of public schooling. There are parochial schools and traditional private schools that educate an exceptionally small percentage of the population of students, and for which families pay. Mm-hmm. The state here is subsidizing a massive increase and exodus from the public schools without a clear sense of what institutions or what, for lack of a better term, what will be the social glue that holds communities together in the absence of their public schools. And I think that part of the argument, while the financial piece and the accountability piece are probably more practical and more compelling in the short run, I think the concern runs deeper, that the advocates of this have not thought it all the way through. The fact that families go to 18 different restaurants when they go out to eat, whether they're going to, you know, the local fast food chains or local restaurants, using that model of the competitive marketplace for something as central to community life as schooling is just a flawed leap. And I think that people who are thinking about question 2 should consider not just the financial and the political accountability issues, but also the long-term impact on the community well-being.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up accountability too. Because I mean, in a certain way, it seems like this question is asking voters to vote away their right and their ability to have a voice in how their money gets spent and how the education system is operating in their local community. The more that we increase charter presence, the less people have any say over what happens in those schools and how those schools function in your hometown. And so whether you have children in the school or whether you're just a taxpayer living in this community, if we give that power of a right to be able to elect representatives and come to public speak and hold the district accountable, you give that away when we shift our education out of the public districts and into these privately managed sort of quasi-public institutions that are charter schools.
And I love what Sarah, said about you don't have the idea that, if I send my child to charter school, I can't vote no on 2. But you really can, because we haven't hit the cap.
That's right.
There's still potential already without lifting the cap for a number of charter schools. They simply haven't been created yet. So the idea that we're going to need to lift the cap, it implies that there's already a shortage. And, the misleading advertisements about the number of kids who are waiting to get in implies that, somehow they're already held back. But there's actually a potential right now for more charter schools. There's no need to lift this cap.
That's
We
very
haven't hit
true.
it yet.
Those schools would be accountable to the public, though, the ones that have not been exhausted.
Is that how it works?
No, I think even
Right.
in the charter schools, not the, are you talking about the Horace
Horace
Mann
Mann.
schools? Even in charter schools, there was something like the cap is 121.
It's 120,
Right.
and it's 120, and we presently have 81.
Right.
But lifting the cap is up to another 12 every year without end, with no end.
Yeah.
So,
And I agree with Peter, it's really a movement to abolish public school. And there are just so many reasons that we need to get behind public schools. Equitable services is really important. We have a really unfair imbalance of representation for ELL and special needs students in charter schools. Public schools take everybody, and they service everybody. There is a vast difference between that and a charter school, which gets to be selective. And even though they will say, we accept ELL students and special needs, if you look at the numbers and the percentage and you compare each school to districts, there is a vast difference between the amount of services a public school gives and the number of students being serviced within a charter school.
Nancy,
It's just not equitable.
Superintendent Follensby, I think you had an important number. It was something like out of the 97 students that we have, 7 have an IEP.
And that was for special education.
special
Of the
education.
97 students who left our schools to go to charter schools between 2012 and 2015, the number who had IEPs was 7. And there were similar statistics for the low-income students, the percentage of low-income students who left our schools to go to charter schools. So,
And how does that compare to
Yeah,
district-wide?
just as a point of comparison.
pardon me?
How does that compare to the students remaining in the district? Just as a
About the
comparison?
same percentage of students with low income leaving. So I think, again, it was 97 students left for charters between 2012 and 2015, and I think maybe it was 9 students. I don't have my data in
But
front of me.
how many
But
per
how does-
in the district? Like, if there were 97 just random students in the district, how many of them would have IEPs of who haven't left for charters? Like, what's the percentage?
17%, about 17%.
17%.
What percentage are low income?
Off the top of my head, I think it was around 30,
Yeah, I was going to say that.
30%,
It's 30.
32.
So that it's so frustrating, and I can understand why young people, I work with students who are studying the election this year, and it can be extraordinarily discouraging. But I do think that if you can get people to keep their eye on sort of the factual evidence, right? If the percentage of students who are low income and on IEPs who are leaving East Hampton to take advantage of the charters are in single digits, and the percentage of students in the community as a whole in those two categories are in double digits, it shows the lie. It's a flat out lie. Governor Baker, you're lying about the numbers because you quote the numbers across the state. We don't live across the state. Does anybody go home and sleep in a different community every night? Right? Everybody, we live here. And you and your fellow advocates of question 2 are lying because those statistics do not bear a semblance to the reality of East Hampton's experience. So the challenge, and you'll notice that they're not here again, we've issued this for years. Come and show us what we can do in the East Hampton public school system to keep those students here and to educate them at the costs of the resources that we are left to provide for them. Nobody shows up because it can't be done. But that silence to that kind of evidence on behalf of advocates of question 2 reveals, and I know I have plenty of folks I know who support question 2, and I apologize if it seems disrespectful, but I don't think even with friends that you profit anything by saying, oh, I understand how you feel. I don't. It's not, it's not about understanding feelings. It's about looking at hard realities, and the hard realities are that the evidence isn't true. The charter schools in the Valley, the 4 charter schools here, do not educate the same constituency that the school districts do from which their students come. They are, in effect, cherry picking and taking advantage of that to then tout higher test scores. You don't have to be, good at rocket surgery to know why that's the case.
I guess the last thing that really drives me crazy is that over the years, our budgets have become so much tighter. We're working with every school. If you look across Massachusetts, there are so many schools that have had to cut their budgets. We're working with so many less dollars that the idea that we just should lose more is just going to impact our students at a greater extent, and we really can't afford that. We need to bring dollars back into our school systems. We need to pump money into our youth and our youth's education so that they can be productive citizens and earn a living in these hard economic times. And we just can't afford to keep losing money year after year when there's not a need to. Let's put the money back into the school system, back into public education that services everybody.
Anyone else?
We could probably
Okay.
talk all night about it.
I know,
should.
I know. I think we all feel very passionately
Right.
about this topic, and
Well, I also just wanted to point out one thing as well that we spoke about at the forum is just how politicized it is in the spending. Like we're being the no on 2 is being outspent 2 to 1, and it is. And Chris Capucci was saying it is the most money that's been spent on a ballot question ever
In the United States.
in the United States.
And the sources of that money are not entirely from within the Commonwealth.
That's
No,
correct.
they're
Oh,
not.
Definitely not.
No, they're not.
So a lot of very interesting statistics came out. So
So I
hopefully
would-
people will watch the forum and, get
Yeah.
some information
Great.
and.
before voting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Yes. So at this next point on our agenda, what I'd like to do is jump back and
Excellent.
have Michaela talk to us and give us her student activities update.
All right. So the football team just won to go to playoffs. So today we are starting to coordinate a fan bus, and we got, I think, 10 people so far, and they're going to continue throughout lunches. And we just got done on Friday with the Monster Mash for the Drama Club in the class of 2017. We raised about $350, I heard, which is very good for us. And also we are starting to plan the dance in December for the snowball. And we're also starting to plan the blood drive and future events for other clubs.
And Michaela, you made me remember something that happened today too. We did an interview for East Hampton Media on The Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
And 4 of our students were there in full costume, one of them being Deb Lusnia's daughter, Katie, who is going to be Dorothy. And so I think that'll be up and available on the website. We had the Scarecrow, the Tin Girl, we had Dorothy, and we had the Cowardly Lion. And they were in full costume and full makeup, and they were wonderful. And as well as we had Bonnie Katusik and Amy Davis. Bonnie Katusik is the president of the Parents Council that sponsors the event, and Amy Davis is the director, the technical director, that's right. And also the drama teacher at our high school. So I hope you'll also check out East Hampton Media and see our students and get excited about this musical. I think it's going to be a wonderful event for everyone. One of the things that came out today is that there are a number of middle school students who are going to be participating as well, being munchkins. So we hope you'll all attend.
They have like 20 or 30, 20 or something like that, 20 or 30
Yeah.
middle school students participating.
That's great.
Great.
5 through 8, so it'll be a great event.
Michaela, I'm
Thank
just
you.
curious, your snowball dance, is that a semi-formal?
Yes. We were going to call it the winter formal, but we wanted to give it a better name because most people would be like, oh, I have to go buy a very expensive suit or something. So that's why we're going to call it the snowball. But yeah, it's like normally like our homecoming, but we just pushed it to December.
Nice. Sounds good. Well, good luck to the football team.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. The superintendent's report.
So I have Principal Burke and Assistant Principal Wilson here this evening, and they're going to give you an update on the East Hampton High School profile. And then I'm also, as one of the reports this evening is the Adams Scholarship Awards. And Principal Burke, I put the list of students on the podium, and so I'm hoping that after you finish your report on the profile, you'll read off the list of students who were awarded this Abigail Adams Scholarship. So Principal Burke and Assistant Principal Wilson, if you'd like to join him.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I believe we sent out the school profile so that all you
have
had
it in
a
your
chance to
packet, so.
reference it. Do you want me to go through some of the important facts on it, or did you have questions?
Why don't you go through what you think is important, give a little overview, and then we'll see what kind of questions there are.
A lot of this is repetitive from last year, but obviously we are still accredited by the Massachusetts State Department of Education and NEAS, which is the New England Association of College and Secondary Schools. We participate in a lot of school memberships, including, as talked about, National Honor Society, which I also wanted to throw out there. We don't just have the blood drive, we have the induction coming up very soon, too. We also have the National School Counselors Association, which one of our counselors is very highly involved in. So we get a lot of good feedback through that association as well. I think the next thing to go down to, which is important, is what our graduate placement was last year from the class of 2016, where we had approximately 91.5% of the class continue their education beyond high school, which I think is an excellent piece of data for our school. This is broken down to about 44% of them going to four-year colleges, about 44% going to two-year colleges, with some going into the military, some going into postgraduate programs, and some going into employment right afterwards. But I think that's a huge success for our school and our families, that we have that high percentage moving on after high school.
Great.
The other things that we have are clubs and activities are still going strong. I think the one thing the couple things that have been added that have been successful, last year we added a girls lacrosse club. It was kind of great seeing students walking through the school with lacrosse sticks at the end of the day. It was a unique thing, and it was very successful, and the students are really enjoying it. We're hoping that that can move on to maybe becoming more of a club, but we are working on that, and our athletic director is. We also managed to co-op with the Hampshire wrestling team, which is actually excellent. We've lost students in the past that have left East Hampton High School just to go to the wrestling program. So we were able to form a relationship with Hampshire Regional and form a co-op this year. And we do have some students who are interested. And actually just went up on our website. We have there is a meeting, I believe it's November 16th at Hampshire Regional regarding the wrestling co-op. Some more information is our AP, our advanced placement test scores. We still have an amazing amount of students. We had the most amount of students taking AP exams. We had 209 exams that were taken in our school last year, which is great. When you look across and you look at the number of exams with the 3, 4, or 5, I think one of the things to look at across all of it is that number-wise, we have from 2013, 83 to 2013, 96 to 88 to 88. Those are the amount of students that have actually scored a 3 or better in taking a test. And sometimes when you look at the numbers, they're deceiving as far as, you know, maybe you had less with the score of 5 or more with the score of 3. And you look at percentage-wise, we have usually between 40 to 50% of our students scoring a 3 or better on those test scores, which is pretty good as far as an average goes. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize, in case anyone's looking closely at that data and is concerned about what is here, I think the striking statistic is the percentage of students who are taking the exams. And the number of students who are enrolled. I think some people will look at the slight dip in the percentage of 3s, 4s, and 5s and wonder what that's due to. I know that in 2015, 2016, the College Board has acknowledged that on at least 2 of their most popular exams, they made a fundamental decision to make them harder and to grade them more rigorously. So we have an outlier effect that even though the population of students, and as your population of students increases, in theory, you are reaching out to ever more and more students who might traditionally not think of themselves as advanced placement students. So I want to commend the faculty and you two for your leadership and in continuing to encourage students to do this. I think the score on any one day, compared with the qualitative impact that a semester or year-long experience in that kind of environment with the teachers, some of whom I know directly and many more of whom I've heard about by reputation, it's incredibly important that we continue to make this available. And I think it links with the statistic that you highlighted earlier, which is the more students who take an advanced placement course and have a positive experience, they're more likely to imagine post-high school education as part of their future. And so I think the work that you're doing in the advanced placement program, and that these numbers should not obscure this, is really, there's a cause and effect between 2 different sets of data that you're putting here, and the line may not be crystal clear, so I want to underscore it for public attention, that when students take these courses and interact in these environments, they are more likely to aspire to better careers and to more pursuit of higher education. So just in case anybody's looking at those numbers and going, what's happening there? We know what's happening in 2015, 2016, and the key is that the numbers have gone from 124 to 170, they've gone from 158 to 209, and that they've gone, from 31 to 45, right? That what we see overall is this upward trend of participation and successful completion, both quantitatively and qualitatively.
And we have had that discussion in the past regarding whether or not we limit who goes into some of these AP classes, or whether we just open the doors and students who feel they're prepared for can participate in AP, and that's what we've continued with at EHS. And because a lot of the reasons you stated, and also because the data shows that any student taking an AP class, no matter how successful they are on the test itself, are going to do better on college level courses when they get into a college, which is really important.
Yeah, I apologize. I realize I'm re-emphasizing this, but one of the ways you can create really good numbers is to close the door and to put up really high walls and to create barriers so that only a small select population, this goes back to what we were talking before about charter schools. What East Hampton High School says is, if you come and if you're willing and you want this experience and you aspire to it, our faculty will teach you and immerse you in that environment, and whatever the score you may get on the AP exam, and they're still great, these numbers are still terrific, but I know that a lot of schools feel this pressure to artificially raise the what's your average score on the AP exams, and the single best way to do that is to exclude students and to discriminate among the aspiring but perhaps less experienced student, and close the door and never let them in and never let them have that experience at all. And I think it is very much to the credit of what you're doing at the high school and to the teachers who take on all comers and do a great job of that.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. I was curious to understand, when you have the listing of students enrolled in AP courses and then the number of students taking AP exams, and they're significantly higher for the number taking AP exams. So what is that discrepancy?
So multiple students take multiple exams. So some students only take one AP class in one exam. There are some students that might actually be in 3 AP classes. So even when you count the number of students enrolled in an AP course, those are just the students. One student can be enrolled in 3 courses, but it's only counted
per
once.
class.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So
okay,
when
it's
you-
The
not per
left-hand
class.
column is
Okay.
the number of individuals who take at least one class.
At least one.
But as you can see, there's at least 49 students,
Okay.
right?
So it's interesting too for me to hear Peter comment on, because I did the math here to say, okay, 42% are scoring a 3 or higher, like last year, or 44% in 2014-15 scored 44% scored 3 or higher of the people taking the test. So 42% 2015, 2016, 44% 2014, 15.
I don't think those are
52%.
actual percentages. Those are actual, when you're looking at the numbers, those are actual student numbers.
Oh, no, I added them all up.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I added up the total number of students with a score of 3, 4, or 5, and divided it by the number of students
Okay,
taking the
I did the
exam
same.
to get the total percentage of students
Yep.
that are getting a 3 or better. So, I had the question, like, is that good, that 42% of our students are getting a grade of 3 or better? So I was curious about that. That was one of my questions. From what Peter has to say, it sounds like he thinks that that's really good. But I was curious to know.
And I think that's kind of where the conversation was going. I think if we closed the doors and had kind of a pre-qualifier for students entering into some of these AP classes, then we would reduce the score. Where you look at some of our, if you dive into the data closer and you look at some of our like AP calculus, I think there was 12 students that took the test, and I believe 11 of those 12 students received a 5. So you look at those classes, and those classes kind of pre-select as is, just because of the difficultiness of the class. If you go and look at our 11th and 12th grade AP classes that are English classes, those classes don't pre-select. Instead, a lot of students want to take those classes because the teachers in those classes are so good, they want to actually be part of those classes. So those are where our largest numbers actually come into. And I think that's where we see our greatest discrepancy on our test scores, as far as where students score as far as a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
And I think the other thing is that we're always looking to strive for better, and many of our faculty have gone to College Board AP professional development last year, and will continue this year to see what type of curriculum can be put in place and what type of strategies to get improvement. They're always looking to improve and offer more for their students. So I
And
think
had-
we always can do better.
And
Yeah.
we had test change last year, which
Right.
does affect the way
Yes.
teachers teach, and
Yes.
teachers look back
Well,
and
they
reflect on
changed the
that.
structure of
Yes.
one of the most popular AP
Right.
exams And so there's always a bit of a transition effect there. But then they also, and they're very clear about this, and East Hampton High School is not the only community in the Valley that's commenting on what happened with AP scores this last year, and the College Board has been forced to acknowledge that for a variety of reasons, they applied a different standard and more rigorously applied that standard and produced results. There's a raging argument, and Kevin and Sue are alluding to this, but I'll be very explicit about it. Do we want to open the doors for educational opportunity to as many students as possible, or do we want to go back to the 1970s and the 1980s when only a select few of students who were sort of predetermined to be AP kids and have a de facto tracking system that was largely self-fulfilling and very hard for someone who was not early on tabbed to be in it to break into it. And I think, and I've seen, and I've worked closely with the AP students in government and U.S. history at East Hampton High School, as I've spoken to you before, and I've seen the range of students. And again, to our comment to our charter school friends out there, there are students in these courses who are on IEPs. Again, one of the theories of charter schools was that they were going to be innovators and that they were going to come up with these great new ways of providing education, and they were going to come and share them with us. No one's coming to the East Hampton High School social studies classes that I'm aware of saying, oh, here's how you ought to do it, because it's already being done exceptionally well here, right? And so again, sorry to beat that drum a little bit more loudly, but that was the theory behind charter schools, was that they would be these laboratories of innovation. Nobody is showing up at East Hampton High School saying, here's a better way to teach these courses. In fact, some of our lead teachers are the principal professional development educators in the Valley. And I'm glad that we have erred on the side, and I don't think it's err, I'm glad that we have leaned in the direction, intentionally and by design, of saying we want as many students. If you walk into those classrooms and you see the range of students, it's a common experience. What they're all being asked to do is to aspire to excellence in a way that a non-AP course might not do. And I think to keep those doors open is incredibly important. This is, by the way, one of the reasons that this whole business with using MCAS tests to grade schools is so vindictive, because in the AP curriculum, if you do open it up, you are inevitably going to see your scores moderate to some degree, and to punish people and to punish institutions and to be critical of them for that is so counterproductive and counter-missionary to what public education is about, that it's offensive. And so I think it's terrific that the number of students who are taking this, we could do a whole bunch of things if we were only worried about the numbers. I think the first two columns matter more than anything else, because the experience that the students have in those courses is so phenomenally important that we want to encourage all of our students to take advantage of.
And to add one more thing too, we're not just going on that encouraging level where we're opening the doors for students that want to take it. We're also, if you go in, and this was approved by the school committee, every student that takes an AP class has to take the test. So we don't have an opt-out policy as far as, I just want to take the class because I like the teacher and I want the experience. Every student is held to that level of expectation of going in there and doing well on that test, which I think raises the bar and the expectation for the students that we have, which also
There are
plays a role
schools
in
that
this.
allow for opt-out, which again cooks the data. Right? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics in descending order.
Well, there's a benefit to trying to meet that challenge. There's a benefit to taking an AP course and doing the best you can with that exam. So I really like the idea.
Well, and I-
That as many kids as possible are taking it, but that we're also holding them to, try to hit that bar. Take
That
the
was
test.
the premise of the grant that we had 6 to 8 years ago. Peter, maybe you remember that when we
Right,
had
the
the
Mimsy
Mimsy
grant.
grant.
Right.
Which was wonderful opportunity for us to expand our AP programs, and that was exactly the intent behind the funds that were given to us, that we would expand the opportunities to more students. And so we've kept with that same philosophy of giving as many students as possible an opportunity to take the AP exams. And thank you, Peter, for being so eloquent in talking about that, because I know you have great experience with it as well.
It's just a terrific component, and since we're in this competitive marketplace, any of you out there who are considering charter school education or school choice. Look at the courses that are on offer here in East Hampton, and come sit in a classroom. I guarantee that any parent who is interested in a valuable educational experience, who sits in an AP U.S. History or an AP U.S. Government class, those are the two that I've sat in, and can speak to this directly, is going to walk out of the room thinking this is the place to be.
And I wish I had been there when I was a student. That's what we strive for.
Any other questions on the AP data? It also has our SAT and ACT scores. I don't know if there are questions.
I was surprised to see that only 44% of the class actually took the SATs. That seemed like it was low to me.
Well, it kind of fits in with our college data as far as we have about 44% of them moving on to a four-year school. So we do the PSATs in our schools in 10th and 11th grade. We used to offer PSAT testing, but it's really up to the student and the family to decide to send their student off to take the SATs. We do encourage it. We do encourage our kids to go into a higher education. A lot of our students do go the 2-year route, where SATs is not as it's not as well needed as going into a 4-year school when you're trying to place into a 4-year school. So I think it kind of fits with the data as far as where our students do end up going.
The 2-year versus the 4-year. I'm always kind of curious about that 2-year versus 4-year approach too. I know that everyone touts, the economical approach of the 2-year plan, which the 2-year as a starting point, and I understand that. But I'm always kind of curious about that in terms of how we'd even compare with other communities, with the percentages going on to 2-year versus 4-year colleges.
And I think more important than that is looking at whether students actually stay in either that 2-year or 4-year school. I know other communities that have, they'll claim their high school has 90+% students going on to 4-year schools, but when you dive into that data a little deeper, you realize that a very high percentage of those kids don't make it through even their first year of a 4-year school. I would rather see students in our community go on to a 2-year school, get the support they need, and then move on. And with some of the matriculation agreements that we have with UMass, as far as that the community colleges have, there are ways for these students to go right in and be accepted if they do well in a 2-year school.
That pathway seems to have opened up, and our guidance department has really worked at making that pathway even more known and as more of an option for them. And even we've been working with Hoyle Community to come and speak to our students and have an option here for the spring semester.
So students that do well at a community college can gain automatic acceptance to transfer to a 4-year state school.
Correct.
That's excellent.
All the credits are accepted.
And they're all accepted.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's the credits that are accepted. But you touched on...
But the student as well.
Mhm, right. But
That's amazing. That's wonderful.
And you touched on something that has been kind of trendy lately because of the exorbitant prices of education, that a lot of students, even though they plan on going to a 4-year college, will go and knock off the core at a community college the first 2 years, even with the intention of what college they want to go to after that, just to save it
Or to flesh out what they
and
want.
then where they graduate from, when they get their degree, their bachelor's, it's from the 4-year college. So just a lot of times it's really just to save a little bit of, it saves a lot. It saves a lot the first 2 years.
It might be helpful if I could just make the suggestion, Principal Burke, that because a number of students elect to take the ACT instead of the SAT, that if you could in the future perhaps break out the numbers. I know that there are some students who are counseled to take both and to see which is better. It may be that it's 44% for each, but you might find in that data also some of what our chair is addressing. If we just were to provide that sort of consistent statistical data there, then that might help inform people who have the same question.
That leads me to another question. On the SATs, Did the scoring change for the class of 2016? Is the scoring different? It's a different test this year, correct?
You can go ahead. Oh, so they did change the scoring as far as I think as far as they actually graded some of the tests, because they changed some of the PSATs and how they did it. I'm not as quite sure on the SATs on the scoring, because we don't work with administrating the SATs, so I'm not exactly sure how those were changed. I know that the PSATs have been changed per grade level and when they're actually given in some of the tests. How the SATs were changed, I know there was scoring changes, but I can't speak on how they were actually changed.
Okay, because I was under the impression that the test changed and the scoring changed, the whole way they score things changed so that they mean different things, so that it would be hard to compare, scores from previous years
Yeah.
to what's happening now.
Well, they've given us the data so we could actually put this on here. So if they've changed the scorings to what they're giving out to students, we're still able to access it through the College Board and kind of compare
So
it
this
to
is
past years.
translated into language where we can make that comparison from year to
Yeah,
year.
I mean, when we go into it, the College Board provides us with all that information. Like I said, we can actually dive into the PSAT data and look at our students more specifically. We can't do that on the SATs. We don't have that option. The last part of the profile looks at classes from 2014 to 2016 and the college acceptances from four-year colleges and to two-year college and programs. As of right now and in the past, we rely on student information as far as what they provide us. And our guidance our guidance department does a pretty good job of making sure that we have all the colleges down here. Hopefully, we have not missed any colleges. If we have, we'd be happy to add them in. Any other-
We've talked about this before. This document is largely used, or one principal use of it is to communicate a description of the school with a college application, right? And I think that a lot of this information is designed to situate the particular applicant relative or contextualize that person. I think that one other suggestion that I would make is that, given that is so often the case, I think we sort of undersell the course offerings, and there is a discussion of the advanced placement courses, and I was trying to see, I looked at it before tonight's meeting, and now I'm having a hard time going back to it electronically.
It starts with the program of studies. It talks about the type of courses, the
Right.
advanced, the AP courses, the honors, the academics.
Right, I guess, where was I? Oh, well, yes, I apologize, it's right there in the very opening, when you talk about high-interest, personalized, and diverse course offerings. I applaud the emphasis on computer programming, multimedia design, world languages, calculus, forensics, fine arts. There's a department that's missing from that list.
I'll bet it's history.
So, and I also think, as you point out, that we have this highly decorated and well qualified faculty. I wonder if we could quantify that just a bit more by perhaps talking about the length of tenure, how long people have been here, and perhaps including the percentage who have earned an advanced degree, because I suspect that both of those numbers would further underscore the quality of the experience that our students have there. I think we have a great group of young but also veteran teachers, and a lot of folks who've studied beyond just the bachelor's and professional certification, but have gone on to do significant professional development and advanced degree work. I think it's a great document. I'm just looking for.
No, I think those are excellent ways to
ways to
improve
further
it.
emphasize it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we do that with 44.
Well, I'd just like to say, I think we have a phenomenal high school, absolutely phenomenal high school, and great leadership, great kids, and wonderful teachers, faculty, staff. And I personally could not be more proud of East Hampton High School and all of the people involved.
Thank you.
Especially having two daughters who've been at the high school.
They're having and had a great experience.
We're very proud of our high school and proud of our administrators and our faculty. We have an extraordinary faculty.
It's the students in the community that make it that way, so.
Can I just digress and just tell one little story? One little heartwarming story. I just have to say, probably seems trivial to everyone, but it just popped into my head and I want to share it. Speaking of our faculty and how caring and dedicated they are, it's really extraordinary on every level. But I just tell this one story that my daughter told me when they had to evacuate the building one day last week, and it was very, very cold outside. And we had this teacher who had on, my daughter's teacher had on a sweater and a jacket and whatever in her classroom. She just was dressed in all these layers. And she took off all of her layers and gave them to all the kids and wanted to make sure they were all warm and was so concerned about them all being warm. And she stood there in a little shirt and gave all her layers that she was wearing inside to all of her students, and was just the most caring, loving person, and she is throughout her day-to-day life at the school anyway. I've noticed that myself, and both my daughters always commented on that. And anyway, I just that's Miss McDonald, and I just wanted to say one little small story about how touching and how much they care about their students.
It matters.
Yeah, and they're learning.
And I think your vignette is true of all of our faculty.
Right.
Really.
Right.
Wonderful.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the profile? So I've asked.
Should we, the Adams Scholar?
Yes, so that's what I was going to
sorry.
go to next.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
I didn't forget. I've asked Principal Burke and Assistant Principal Wilson if they would read off the names of the students who've received the Adams Scholarship letters. They just came in the mail this week. We're very proud of this. Maybe talk a little bit about the scholarship and then who in our class have
Absolutely.
awarded one.
I'm happy to read off the names. Do you want to talk about this is if you get it advanced?
Yeah,
Right.
these are for students who score advanced on the MCAS. So these are students who are recognized by the state for achieving well in academics on the MCAS standardized test.
Right. So the class of 2017, the students who received the Adams Scholarship letters, I'm going to read them off. Very proud of them. And Haley Bard, Madison Bates, Daniel Callahan, Nikisha Carter, Allison Christopher, Sylvia Siborowski, Frank Cole, Zachary Crisafulli, Rachel Emerson, Drew Fox, Francis Furman, Samantha Garcia, Michaela Gerton, our own representative,
Michaela.
Andy Hall, Veronica Hing, Logan Hunt, Rachel Lambert, Patrick Liszkowski, Tess McCallum, Angela Nardi, Dylan Nelson, Savannah Ouimet, Callie Pollan, Megan Payan, Isabel Poirier, Ella Smith, Olivia Stoddard, Jacob Thayer, Jade Velasquez, Hannah Vescovi, and Karina Volpe. Congratulations.
Congratulations to all.
And all those students' letters were sent home to the families. And those can be used to, those letters, they can duplicate those letters and use those when they apply for colleges.
Excellent. Excellent. We're very proud of them.
Yes.
Okay, thank you both for your report this evening.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one last question. You have guests?
We
Oh,
do
yes,
have
it
guests, yes. We have two guests from the Netherlands. They are visiting. They are teachers who have come over. This is the second year we've done this. This has been arranged by our social studies department for 2 straight years in a row. They are here through Tuesday.
Through
Thursday.
through tomorrow as
Yeah.
Fulbright scholars.
Wednesday.
They and a group of, I want to say 20-odd other Fulbright scholars are in the area. They've taught classes. They've interacted with students. They've been to the cooking class after school and made butternut squash soup and enjoyed
design.
It's set design. They've come to the dance. Today they were at a school at their host. Can we say the host family?
Yes.
The Crab family. One of our seniors from our Chloe Crab was a class of 2016, and Quentin Crab is at our high school, and they're hosting both of those teachers from the Netherlands. They have infused this breath of fresh air and diversity and relationship building between the Netherlands and East Hampton, and they are just so, as Superintendent Follansby and the mayor can and Deb Luzniak can testify, they just are so taken by our district and by our high school. And tomorrow they'll be at the middle school and at Williston, seeing different options of teaching in the area. But they have just been so thrilled by our students and by our process, and we in turn, they did a presentation to us yesterday, we in turn have learned a lot about education in the Netherlands, which has been very useful to our faculty and to us.
Yeah.
And I think it leads right into what you were saying earlier, Deb, about the teacher outside in the cold. What came through in that presentation, which by the way was really very interesting, and the excitement, there was a lot of excitement there. Very, very, very well done. I commend you on that. But the sense of community, that was like one of the overall things when they were talking, and they were kind of amazed at how large our school was. But at first, that was, it's so much bigger. But they said, but inside it has the small feel of a community. So that came through over and over, which is a message that we've been trying to get out so many times, and it leads right into what you were saying earlier.
When we sat down and had a conversation with them when they first came in, one of the things that we were told was that the woman who was visiting, her husband teaches in the same school, and his class will come into their house, and she won't even know who those kids are. That's the culture and climate in the school, and it is definitely a bigger school. I think it's a school of 1,300 students, but still, that would not occur. I mean, when you walk through our building, our teachers know our students, our faculty, our staff, the administrators. We take good care of making sure that we're around the building, that we're welcoming the students, and we're getting to know as many students as possible.
It was very interesting.
It was definitely an experience that enriched our whole school community. And I think they enjoyed themselves because they said they really didn't want to leave. They'd like to stay for 2 weeks.
Yeah, the pair of faculty who visited last year, I had the opportunity to meet, and I'll meet these folks tomorrow, and I remember them speaking so highly and talking about the interaction that they had with the faculty, both at the high school, and they'll see middle school as well tomorrow. And I think, again, this is the kind of opportunity that's a byproduct of the efforts of our staff, and not just the person who initiates. It's great to issue an invitation. The success of the endeavor hinges on everyone embracing the opportunity, and I think the faculty throughout the school system embrace the opportunity to meet with these visitors, to invite them into their classes, to share with them their experience, and to listen and learn from each other. And I think that, again, testifies to the strength and quality of what we have on offer here in East Hampton.
I'll add to that, I think it's the community in the whole that embraces them, so,
Yes,
which I think is
correct.
important. I just look when the opportunity is reversed and we can go visit there, but, and I'm sure some of our teachers are looking forward to that reversed opportunity.
Break out the orange, right? We'll go with orange on our way over.
That's right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
very much.
In here.
Okay,
So,
moving on. Next on the agenda, we have warrants and payroll.
right, so a motion to approve the school committee meeting minutes for the regular meeting of October 11th, 2016.
I would like to request a change here. Under the resolution.
Yep.
It currently reads, Mr. Gunn expresses concerns on ballot question 2, charter schools, and reminded the public the school committee voted to adopt the resolution lifting the cap against, we need the
Right.
word against, lifting the cap on Commonwealth charter schools.
Oh, right. I thought it was opposing, but I got you. Any objections to that friendly amendment?
Okay, that's all I have to say about that before we approve it.
Okay.
Any other comments on the agenda? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Oh, yeah, I made a motion to approve, sorry.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Oh, is there a second? I'm sorry. All those in favor with the amendment? Thank you. Motion passes. Okay. Okay, warrants and payroll we'll do next.
Sure. Jeekers. I remember how to do this. I do. I know, go for the pink. That was last month, but we can do it again this month. I move to approve the school payroll dated 27 October 2016 in the amount of $473,151.07.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. The motion has been seconded to approve the school payroll dated October 27th, 2016 in the amount of $473,151.07. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion, I move to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated 27 October 2016 in the amount of $177,576.55. Oh, that's neat. She spells it all out for you.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion, it's been seconded to approve accounts payable authorization for payment dated October 27th, 2016 in the amount of $177,576.55. All those in favor? Motion passes.
I think that's it.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have discussed having Peter Gunn take over the role of school committee secretary since Marissa Carreri took over the role of chairperson of the policy subcommittee. So in an attempt to not overburden Marissa, we're trying to spread out the workload, and Peter has offered to assume the job of secretary. Is there any discussion? Would someone like to make a motion to approve that change?
Motion to approve the change from Marissa as secretary to Peter Gunn.
Second.
There's a motion, it's been seconded to appoint Peter Gunn as secretary of the school committee. All those in favor? Motion passes.
Motion to approve, do we also need to make a motion to approve the change in the leadership? We made an announcement about it, of the subcommittee.
We already did.
They already did
Great,
that
okay, right, that's what, I
at the
apologize.
subcommittee.
Right, we did it there. Okay, so motion to approve the out-of-state field trip request to High Meadow in Granby on the 30th of May. We are way ahead here in our
Yeah.
planning.
Second.
Oh, to think of May 30th, today.
Okay.
It's a senior class trip that occurs after the students have completed their final exams and while they await the blessed day of their graduation.
There's a motion to approve, and it's been seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes.
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor? Thank you very much.